True Skinwalker encounters that will leave you speechless. I thought I was alone out there, until something whistled back. There are 3 nights I still can't forget. Each one began like a normal walk, a normal camp, a normal joke between people who thought the woods were just that. Trees, animals, and the small, manageable mysteries of nature. I'm not claiming to have answers. I'm only telling you what I felt, what I heard, and what I still carry when I'm alone on a trail, or late at night in a house that used to feel safe. If you like true encounter stories, consider subscribing. There are more like this, and I swear I'm only sharing them because keeping them inside has made me smaller. The first time was in 2015, on a mountain trail in Arizona. I'd gone out alone for a day hike, no one with me except a backpack and a map that lived mostly in my phone. The trailhead was tucked into scrub and rock, a narrow opening that led up and away from the highway, and at first it was the kind of quiet that settles into your bones. Heat pressed against me. The sun made everything sharp. The glint off rock faces, the hard silhouette of mesquite, the brittle edge of dead branches. I remember the smell of dust, the way my shirt stuck to my back when I stopped to catch my breath. A few miles in, I took what looked like a small side path, the kind that might lead to a better view or a seep of shade. It wasn't maintained, too overgrown for a regular route, so I felt a little foolish leaving the main track. That's when I heard it. A single, high whistle coming from above me, small and deliberate. At first I thought it was a bird or some cowbird mimicking, but it was too steady, too human in its cadence. It was a note held and answered, like someone on a porch calling a dog. It happened again, closer and lower. I froze the way you do when a sound in the dark is wrong. The hair along my arms prickled. The whistle had a hollow tone, almost like a metal pipe being blown across, and it didn't slur like a bird's song. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I told myself to keep moving, to stay rational. People hike those ridges. Maybe someone was messing with me. But the trail climbed, the brush closed, and the sound repeated, this time directly uphill, then to my right, then down and behind me, as if someone were walking around the ridge and calling. On an unremarkable patch of ground under a stand of dead juniper was a pile of sticks arranged like a crude nesting den. I knelt because I'm nosy by nature. I poked at the arrangement with a hiking pole. There were tufts of fur, flattened grass, and a couple of hoof prints that looked like a goat's, too large for the wild goats I'd seen before. I stood up, turning slowly, and then I saw it. It was on a ledge, half hidden by shadow, a shape more massive than I expected. At first glance, it read as a goat, broad chest, dark coat. But it was wrong somehow, the kind of wrong that makes your stomach drop. Its head tilted in a way goats sometimes do, assessing you. But then it opened its mouth and whistled. Not a grunt, not a bleat. A clear, thin whistle that answered mine and then added a pattern like it was teasing. The sound came out too perfectly. The animal's eyes caught the sun and were bright, too attentive, as if whatever looked out of them was not entirely goat. I don't know why my feet stayed. Maybe I was trying to prove I wasn't afraid, or maybe I simply couldn't process what was happening fast enough to run. The whistle came again, closer, and with it a movement, slow, deliberate, down the slope. The thing descended with an awkward gait, legs seeming longer than they should have been, hooves stepping too lightly for something that size. I felt my breath shudder. My hands went cold. Then it did something I still replay in my head. With complete calm, it mimicked another sound, a human sigh, short and sharp, and then repeated the whistle pattern back to me. For a second I thought someone had trained an animal to do tricks, until it turned its head and fixed me with those impossibly bright eyes. In that moment my body stopped responding. My brain was dividing into 2 parts, one cataloging facts, the other cataloging fear. I ran before the fear could be rationalized. I ran down that hillside through cactus and barbed branches, skin tearing on thorns, breath hot and ragged, until the highway and my truck and the ordinary whiteness of exhaust smoke and other cars swallowed me. When I tried to tell people, they smiled and moved on. Maybe a goat, they said. Maybe. Later, at home, I poked around online and found forums where people described similar things. Animals that didn't sound like animals, creatures with wrong eyes, whistles in the night. One word kept coming up, Skinwalker. I read the word and felt a cold understanding, even though I had no business using someone else's culture to label my fear. I don't claim that gave me the answer. I only know that afterward, on trails, I began checking over my shoulder more often. And sometimes, in the hush of arroyo dawns, my muscles would clench at a sound that didn't need to be there. Years earlier, there was a night when I was 8, maybe 9, when the woods taught me another kind of fear. Not because of what was out there, but because of what adults thought was funny. It was an annual camping trip. Hot dogs, a tent pitched under an indifferent sky, the smell of smoke that sticks to your hair. My dad and his friend Billy did this thing every summer. They would tell the kids about a snipe, a fictional bird, and send us out with sticks to catch it. The ritual was absurd, and therefore sacred among the grown-ups. They laughed, we ran, it was harmless, until it wasn't. They staged it perfectly. Billy let out a staged scream, a small red smear on his shirt that read false even to my young eyes. The kids scattered, dropping into the brush, crouching to listen. I remember the hush that followed, the way the forest seemed to lean in. I tucked myself under a low bush, leaves brushing my face, and held my breath. The thing I saw didn't look like a snipe. It was closer to what you'd expect of a dog shaped by bad dreams. Legs too long and spindly, a body that sagged with uneven patches of hair, and a head that seemed crushed or mangled, like someone had tried to fit two skulls together. It moved in twitchy bursts, but its eyes found me and stayed. They were intelligent, unnervingly aware, and in those moments the bush around me stopped being a shelter and became a cell. I could feel a pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with the thin air. It was older than me, colder than the night, and it fixed me like a predator might fix prey. It came closer and then froze, as if listening to something deeper in the trees. Time folded. The night stretched. I wanted to push through the branches and run, but my limbs wouldn't obey. Then my dad's voice, loud, normal, broke the spell. He called my name, and the creature blinked once, more human than animal in that brief second, and slipped away, folding into the darkness like a shadow leaving a room. My dad scooped me up and laughed it off, calling the whole thing a prank. Later, by the light of the campfire, adults explained. Snipes are pretend, they said. It was all a joke to teach us to pay attention. I believed them because believing was cleaner than admitting the cold claw of something that might be real. It left a mark. Not a scar you could point to, but a habit. I learned the particular language of stepping softly and of hiding fear from people who might mock me for being terrified of the woods. I learned to hide the way my heart sped when a dog barked oddly from 3 yards away. Childhood naivete was replaced by a hesitance I didn't understand until years later, when the whistle in Arizona made those spindly legs and mangled head surface in my memory, as if connected. The last of the 3 happened when my family had a small cabin in a remote part of Canada. We lived out there for nearly a decade, seasons marking themselves in the paint on the porch and in the way the snow laced the fences. It was the kind of place where you leave the door unlocked and trust the neighbors to call if a cow wandered off. One winter night, everything changed. The cows started bawling like something had driven them into panic, one after the other lowing in a chorus that scraped the windows. I woke to the sound of something dragging near the cabin. A slow, heavy rasp, like something with weight being pulled across frozen ground. My wife and I froze, awake in a way that feels carved out of sleep. Outside, under a sodium lamp, a deer stood with the composure of a thing waiting to be admitted. That would have been normal if not for its face. Its eyes, those white rings and tiny dark pupils, fixed on the pane like a person's might. They were not the soft, vacant eyes of a grazing animal. There was intent there, and it unnerved me to the core. The deer didn't bolt when the porch light came on. It stayed, motionless, and after a long stretch of minutes it stepped closer to the window. I remember the clink of a loose board under my foot as I crossed the room to look. Outside, a neighbor stood near his truck. He'd come by because the cows had driven the whole block into a low-level frenzy. He watched the animal and, seeing my confusion, offered a quiet sort of explanation. "Some folks out here put names to things they can't explain," he said. "There are stories, old ones, that talk about beings who take shapes and watch." He didn't push the idea on me. He framed it as something people said, not something he claimed as fact. He mentioned a term I'd heard once on a forum, Skinwalker. He said some local folks, when they saw animals acting wrong or humans turning into animals in the stories, used that word. He was careful, respectful, the way someone mentions a superstition they don't want to offend. I appreciated his caution, but it wasn't the word that mattered in that instant. It was the way the deer looked like it was measuring the rooms in my house, as if deciding whether to come inside. Maybe it was only a deer with weird eyes, maybe it was something else. All I know is that I slept poorly for weeks, checking that the doors latched tightly, that the children's room was shut, that no shape loomed too close to the glass. After that winter, we moved closer to town. The move was practical, our jobs, schools, but it also felt like an unspoken retreat from a place that had changed, where the ordinary veneer had peeled away in the most mundane of ways. When I think back, what connects the 3 nights isn't a single explanation. It's the strangeness in how animals behaved, not running when they should, making sounds they shouldn't, looking at you like they could read the script of your life. It's the small humiliations, too. How I lied when friends asked, how I pretended to sleep, how I laughed off the moments that refused to fit. Carrying these stories has been lonely. I didn't tell everyone because some of the reactions I feared were worse than the actual events. Dismissal, jokes, being told I'd let fear make me foolish. For years I kept them inside like a coin in my pocket that I'd rub with my thumb when the room got too quiet. They've shaped me. The way I move in woods, the way I glance at windows, the way my chest tightens when a new sound arrives at dusk. At times, when the watching feeling peaks, I catch myself doing things that used to be automatic. When I bike along a path, I find myself slowing when leaves stutter in the wind, listening for a whistle that might not belong to any known animal. I avoid the far side of fields at dusk where shadows pile deep. I don't tell my kids the whole truth. I give them gentle cautions. Stay together, don't wander off, and leave out the nights that would frighten them more than inform them. I'm not offering proof. I'm offering experience, my own messy human recollection, and a small plea for respect for stories that sit just outside explanation. Maybe the right reaction is skepticism. Maybe these were animals with odd behaviors, or the tricks of tired minds, or pranks that got out of hand. Maybe they were something that lives in the margins of what we think we know. I don't know. What I do know is how it felt to be watched by eyes not quite animal, how a whistle can make you run, and how childhood pranks can blur into lifelong unease. If any of this resonates, if you've heard a whistle in the dark or felt a gaze from something that shouldn't understand you, tell your story in the comments. We gather these fragments together and they stop being a secret we alone carry. Subscribe if you want more first-hand accounts. I have more to share and I'm tired of swallowing them. For now, I keep walking, and sometimes on an empty ridge or under a porch light, I still wait to hear something whistling back.